As a kid, growing up in Little Rock, I was aware that my civil rights practically were non-existent. The opportunity to go to Central had a lot of meaning for me in that regard. So I was more than willing to be a volunteer. Obviously, we couldn't get in. I mean, that day the governor had called out the National Guard with the directions to keep us out of school. They were close. I mean, within touching distance. That's the one thing I remember. A great deal of fear. I understood that what we were doing was important. It was a valuable thing to do. But I was also aware that what we were doing would not change things that much. It would not end racism overnight. After that one school year, 57-58, the governor of Arkansas closed down all public high schools in Little Rock. His decision was that if he couldn't have segregated schools, he wouldn't have any schools.
I took education pretty seriously anyway, but once you learn what your father has gone through, then you take it even more seriously. And the fact that I could go to any school I wanted to, and in fact, after my sophomore year in high school, I decided I wanted to go to a different high school. I just went to the high school and signed myself up. You know, you think, oh, this is a different world for me. I think he gets that there's something very special about his papa.
It was part of the Little Rock Nine. I have the Little Rock Nine book. At the beginning, it was kind of scary. The law was that black students could not be with white students. If I couldn't go to school, I would have to work at home. But I wouldn't know what to do.
His perception of race and racial relations might be very different just based on how, you know, he was born in 2003. He'll think it's so odd that they had this notion of segregation. I would hope. We'll see.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, why don't you hold on?
We haven't had the kind of change even now that I would like to see. And I think the reason for that is that for a very, very long time in this country's history, we have focused on maintaining walls of separation between people based on racial group membership. Until we confront that history and decide that we're going to alter it, we're not going to see real progress. So it was possible to have that Rodney King episode simply because you have all this underlying stuff bubbling up, unattended. And it raises its head. It raised its head more recently with the Jena 6 down in Louisiana. And a lot of people were shocked that such a thing could happen, quote, in these times. I was not shocked, simply because I knew and understood that those forces of racism are strong. What Obama represents is an opportunity for this country to move beyond those racist ideas, that ideological point of view.
Once you learn what people who look like me had to go through to vote, absolutely, you vote every time you're supposed to vote. So voting for Barack Obama was just an amazing feeling that I had the opportunity, not just because he was an African American, but because he was smart. Would you have voted for Obama if he had not been, if he had had some radical ideas?
No, obviously not. See, it has nothing to do with race. You know, there are some black people who simply don't qualify. He's President Obama. And people will look at him in many, many different ways. Some will see him as an American, some will see him as an African American.
As a kid growing up, people ask my sister and I a lot, and still do, just happened to be a couple weeks ago. They look at me and they say, what are you? What's your ethnic background? And my response and my sister's response usually is, I'm an American.
Race is artificial. It has no meaning whatsoever, has no scientific basis in fact. It's contrived. Today, people speak proudly about their, quote, racial heritage. It's all nonsense, absolute nonsense. I think at some point, eventually, we're going to have to think beyond race. We can't yet because we're so mired in it, but at some point, if we are to be successful as a country, we have to.